If you are a cryptocurrency, PulseX is going to eat your lunch and steal your girl. It has the best tokenomics that I've ever seen, and I really think it's being underestimated right now, certainly in regard to how much potential it has. Now, I totally understand that a lot of people who did manage to get into the PulseX sacrifice may have missed out on the initial Pulse Chain sacrifice. And as such, as both projects launch, as the whole rest of the ecosystem comes to fruition, they may have the notion that getting out of some or all of their PulseX position and buying into Pulse Chain as soon as possible may yield them the best return. And usually this is for one of two reasons. One, FOMO, let's be real. Two, because looking at things logically, looking at historic past performance, you may notice that layer ones typically have done better than decentralized exchanges. Well, there's a couple of extra things to think about. Firstly, DEXs have been around for about 5 minutes. They got thrown into the mix during the last bull cycle for good reason. They were a hot topic and have done very well. But there is a lot more runway to go. Right now, comparing the two is like comparing apples to oranges. We still have a lot more data points to pull from going forward. We're going to need this next bull cycle and the bull cycle after that to really make this an apples to apples comparison. Secondly, we've seen just how much of a light has been shone on the importance of decentralizing your cryptocurrency over the past weeks and months. We've seen what's happened to FTX. We've seen what's happened to Gemini, to Kraken. A lot of this negativity around the risks involved in using centralized formats to buy and trade your crypto, certainly keeping your crypto on these centralized formats. And so I think going into the next bull cycle, a lot more of a strong message, a lot more interest is going to be on the importance of decentralization and therefore a lot more economic energy. So coupled with the fact that we're going into the bull cycle, we're also going to have a lot of people actually valuing the value propositions that come with a decentralized vehicle. Now let's talk about the unique selling points of PulseX because they are unbelievable. We have first, and this is in my opinion the biggest factor with PulseX, it is the buy and burn. What does that mean? Well, essentially every single transaction incurs a fee and a percentage of that fee is going to be used automatically to buy up Pulse Chain and then burn it. It's essentially like a whale coming in every single day, buying up large amounts of PulseX and then losing their wallet. At worst, this is going to add a lot more stabilization to the price. At best, we could see some magnificent price performance as that momentum really starts taking form. Now, a lot of people out there have asked me, what is the best time, what is the best project within this ecosystem to get involved in if you haven't yet bought any? If you miss both sacrifices and you either have been accumulating HEX, as I have advised, not financial advice, of course. So hopefully, by the time these projects launch, you're going to be sat there with a lot more value than what you'd essentially put in because hopefully, and probably in my opinion, the price of HEX is going to significantly rise as we start getting nearer to the launch of the rest of this ecosystem, meaning that you have a lot more value to play with. You can partition off part of your proceeds there and start dollar cost averaging in to where you deem fit. Now, we've talked about how a lot of people are going to have FOMO in terms of exiting out of their PulseX position, especially during that first 2-day window where it's going to be mainly ratio trading between intra-ecosystem assets. Maybe a weird way of saying it, but you get what I'm saying. They're going to be exiting out of their PulseX, buying Pulse Chain because they don't want to miss out and they want to get in as soon as possible. Now, this could have the effect of presenting you guys who haven't yet taken a piece of this ecosystem to get in at a very good entry point for PulseX. Now, do I think, even with that interest going into Pulse Chain, even with a lot of this ratio trading coming into effect, that we're going to see a PulseX dip below that sacrifice amount? I don't think so. I think it's very unlikely we get near to sacrifice, but relatively speaking to open market value, to the first buying opportunities, we may have a prolonged period where it may make sense for people to primarily get into PulseX because as soon as the narrative shifts and that economic energy comes back into PulseX, I think we're in for a wild ride. My personal opinion is that PulseX is going to be the story of the next bull cycle. I think it's going to bring a whole new dynamic to crypto. It's going to help bring a whole new dynamic to decentralized exchanges. And I think we're going to see some parabolic movement that goes from strength to strength as this next cycle plays out. Now, past this next cycle, how it does in comparison to Pulse Chain, it's anyone's guess. I would assume that all of this ecosystem continues to thrive. And so it's going to be very difficult to make a bad decision in this case. But in terms of right now, potentially taking advantage of what seems to be the red-headed stepchild right now of the ecosystem, there doesn't seem to be so much direct enthusiasm or excitement around PulseX. This could mean that when we do launch, you're able to get in at a much lower price than what you're going to be afforded a little bit further on. And this could be the perfect way to get into this ecosystem and still reap the maximum rewards. So I hope this helped. Please do leave comments in terms of what you think is going to happen over this next bull cycle, and certainly when these projects launch. As always, it would be great if you watched right until the end to leave uncaged in the comment. And maybe I should have been more specific in the last video. Uncaged, of course, is a wordplay with my name, so please use a K. Feel free, if you've watched the whole video, to leave that there. I'm also thinking about putting together a Patreon that's really going to be a portfolio that goes from 10K to a million K or whatever numbers we play with there. I'm going to be taking my wife through it. I'm going to be taking my father through it too. So I figured, why not, while I'm looking at some of these other projects, while I'm looking at some layer twos, some other ecosystems on top of this one to really maximize my gains from bear market to bull market, why not take everyone along the journey with me too? And hopefully we can all be high-fiving and having parties come the bull cycle when hopefully we've made our bags even bigger. If that is of interest to you, and I will say keep an open mind. I'm all for having enthusiasm and confidence about a particular ecosystem, but it certainly doesn't help to pigeonhole yourselves away from potential opportunities going forward. So if you are interested, leave a comment. I'm going to take a temperature read right now and see if there is that interest out there. And if there is that interest out there, it's definitely something that I would be excited to bring to this community and hopefully have some huge successes going forward. So stay tuned, and thanks again for watching, guys.